You seem to me such an authentic person, real, empathetic. And how do you maintain that as you grow and scale?
Well, it was difficult when we were a larger company, but after the two acquisitions we had, Studio Press got bought by WP Engine, then we sold the Rainmaker line. I took a break and I came back with just my personal projects that I had always treated as me communicating with the world, not a company or what have you. And now they're both companies, but I've just maintained that, and using my real email address to send out newsletters and whatnot. A lot of people think that's kind of nuts, but I'm realistic about it. I say, look, I read everything. I try to reply as much as I can. If I don't, please don't take it personally. Don't hate me. But yeah, I get a lot of email.
So is it just like, was there ever a point when you were like, okay, this is getting too much, and if I were to respond to every single person, then all my life would be overtaken and this would be my full-time job? And did that hurt you mentally, or did that play any role mentally? Like, oh damn, I can't respond to everyone. I wish I could.
It's interesting because I think during the time when Copyblogger was newer and really rocketing up, 2006 to 2010, that was also the beginning point of what social media used to be. Blog comments were a real thing, before Twitter and Facebook really took over. So that's where the conversations were happening. And it was interesting because your conversations effectively became content, while answering emails seemed like, well, what a waste. This isn't even content. It was a different mindset. Now I would much rather, I think, engage in, a brief but meaningful email exchange with someone, especially when they take the time to write in and say, I appreciate your work, or I have a question, or, it's weird because I think now I appreciate that human interaction perhaps more than I did on the way up, because it was a different time for one, but I have to check myself all the time. I've got a healthy ego, and anytime I catch myself going, well, I'm too busy to communicate with mere people who fall, give me a break. If I ever catch myself thinking that, I know there's a problem. I need to slap myself down.
So how have you checked your ego? What are the ways you go about doing that when you notice yourself getting too big for your britches?
It's a constant process, Danny. No, but I think I'm I've grown up a lot, interestingly enough, in the last 15 years. As we're doing this, Copyblogger turns 15 in a couple of days. It's crazy to me to think. And, I was 38 when I started Copyblogger. So you would think I had some maturity about myself at the time, but there were a lot of things that I think the process of all of this has helped me figure out what's important, right? Because when I started Copyblogger, I was like, I want an audience. And then I just want to make a business that I can feed my family, doing what I love, which is mainly writing, marketing, what have you. And then next thing you know, you've got a few 7-figure businesses, and then we made it to 8 figures, something I never really even aspired to. And so each step of the way, you're going to higher and higher heights of money and influence and status, all the things we think are going to make us happy. Guess what? They don't suck, but that's not where you're going to find fulfillment, right? And that's during my mid-40s, I really started to take a look at that, the bigger picture. I was succeeding in business, but I didn't feel great. My relationships weren't great. My health was terrible. So that's actually where Further came from. I said, I got to start, I got to quit kind of crapping all over personal development. Like it's, like I had it in my head, like Tony Robbins and stuff like that. That does not work with me. But of course I'm a psychology major too. So I'm like, let's go back and look at some of this positive psychology stuff And that made a lot of difference to me. I figured out, oh, I understand now why I'm not fulfilled. I've been chasing the wrong things. Again, nothing wrong with business building, success, money. They're all great things. They can't be the only thing, though.
So, what were some of the things that when you started to get your personal development in check at, I don't know what age you were, but were what were some of the things that you turned to say, okay, this is the path that I want to go down, and this is how, what am I doing on a day-to-day basis to get myself to where I want to go? What were some of those things?
Right. So, before about age 47, I'm 53 now. I was your consummate burn the candle at both ends. Who needs to sleep? I didn't sleep well for, I don't know, a decade or more, probably more. Um, Drank too much, didn't eat well enough, didn't exercise. Um, Loved my family dearly. I'm an introvert, so I don't need a bunch of people, but you've got to take care of the people who are closest to you and matter. And I always did, but I thought the economic part, as I'm the tough dad who gets it done and brings home the money and all that kind of stuff. People need a lot more than from you than that. And I need them, for obviously more than that. So it was really the entire realm outside of business that I was somewhat neglecting. And now fast forward, 6 years later, and I do prioritize sleep, and I do work out, and I do eat well. And, it's the relationships, even beyond my family now, that I reach out more than I ever used to among people, that you could say they're colleagues, industry friends, high school friends, what have you. I was never the guy who was reaching out, and I'm trying to change that. That's more difficult for me because I am pretty self-contained. I like to just do my work, and work on myself. But that's a big part of it. You know how important relationships are, and you've learned it at a young age, and that's awesome.
So, what was the step for Brian 2.0 to start evolving? Was there someone who reached out to you, said, this is the path I want you to go down? Or did you have a voice talk to you? Like, it sounds like a completely different person than who you were 10 years ago from your own analysis. So what was that step that got you to a new path, or was it just a gradual process?
Well, it's interesting because you may not get this reference, but my wife always called me the Madonna of business because I've reinvented myself over and over again. That's kind of an 80s reference there for you. But I have had these moments when I quit practicing law was one and became an entrepreneur, no idea what I was doing. When I quit my first businesses after I had a snowboarding accident, I had brain surgery, big life change. I gave up everything and started Copyblogger. Every time I've stayed true to myself and really said, I can't go on this way. And I've also said, I don't care if I succeed as much as this, as long as, again, like I said, can I make enough to pay the bills and be happy? Every time I've done that, I've gone to astronomical levels of greater success. And, so it sounds like a cliche when people say, be true to yourself. But there's a lot to that. It's not a cliche. It's really aligning your purpose and what's meaningful to you. And so when you put your hard work into it, you get something out that perpetuates, it grows, right? In a way that something you hate will never grow. If you're only doing it for the money, you're a better person than me if you can pull that off. I don't get the real ruthless types. If it's not satisfying to me, everyone talks about process, not results. Well, if you hate the process, how can you be happy with your life? So I think you not only have to focus on process, you have to choose a process or a context where just doing it provides you with fulfillment and satisfaction. And then you get the benefits and it's even better. So the change at 47 doesn't seem as drastic as, quitting the practice of law or giving up your businesses after having brain surgery, but it kind of is, because I was finally growing up as a human being, I think. And so I didn't realize it at the time. And again, I realize now that I started further a couple months after my 47th birthday. And there's something called the U-shaped happiness curve, which basically says you start off happy and you got this slope, and then you kind of bottom out for a while, usually during your 40s. And like your peak unhappiness is at age 47.1, which is oddly specific, but but that's what the research shows. And that's what age I was when I started going, I got to do something here. I got to change something. Everything I thought would make me happy, again, it's great, but it's not it. And then by the time I hit 50, I was happier than I've ever been. Um, Selling a company or two doesn't hurt. But again, it's not the money. I didn't buy a new house. I sold my expensive cars. I'm just like, I have a much better feel for what's important now. Now, don't get me wrong. When you're comfortable, it's easier to work on yourself. But what I'm seeing, and especially communicating with an audience now that's primarily my age range, we're all kind of going through the same things. It's not specific to any one person's situation. It's a phase of life. And generally during midlife, you're transitioning to try to be a better version of yourself, whether you listen to Tony Robbins or not, or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Which again, I have a lot of admiration for young people who kind of work on themselves from an early standpoint, because I kind of thought that was important. I focused on the intellectual side almost too much, because you can't solve everything with rationality.
Yeah, I found that to be the case too. It's like when I was growing up, I thought the importance was just on being as smart as I could be or making as much money as I could. And then I really just found fulfillment in love and giving love to other people. And it's so crazy because it's a different way of thinking than I ever have before, but it has provided the most just joy to myself and others. So yeah.
Yeah. See, that's amazing. When I was 25, I wanted to be Kurt Cobain. Then the next year he died. I'm like, no, that's a bad idea. I think I got to do something else.
Yeah. So take me through that sabbatical that you took, because I think this is like a really cool idea. And if I ever sell a company at any point in my life, it seems like something to do. So take me through this. What was your sabbatical like?
So the interesting thing about this was that we planned the trip before we even had an offer on the company. And the idea was that my kids, were both teenagers. Time goes by fast. The next thing I know, they're going to be gone. So I was talking to my wife and I'm like, look, I can work from anywhere. I've been able to work from anywhere for a long time. So that's not an issue. Where should we go? And she's a big Francophile. So first on the list was France. And we lived there for 3 months. And then we moved on to like a week in Tokyo, which I think cost as much as the 3 months in France. Man. And then we went to Australia for close to 3 months, New Zealand for a bit, Fiji. So all in all, it was about 7 months, literal trip around the world, if you map it out. And it was amazing. The only thing that was kind of disappointing about it is if you ever want to do something like this with kids, they need to be younger or older. Teenagers are a nightmare. They're like, this sucks. I'm like, dude, I don't even know what to do with you. Now they're starting, like my daughter is now 18 and she's like, that was really good. Both of my kids were in a rough patch in, school and life at that point. And I was just like, you guys need to shape it up or I'll do something drastic. And the next thing you know, I yanked him out of school and took him around the world. They're like, man, he wasn't kidding. But that wasn't why I did it. But she's like, that was the best thing for me at that time. And I think
Wow.
over additional time, she'll go, man, that was really awesome when we lived in France. But again, with teens, I mean, you may have some stories yourself of, wow, I can't believe I thought that way as a teenager, but teenagers know everything and they won't listen to you.
Here's a trip around the world and find a way not to be grateful for it. But that's just what it is, and
Yeah.
it's awesome that they're starting to appreciate it now. And it says a lot about your instinct for what is needed in the moment, because they obviously benefited from it long term. So that's awesome to see.
Yeah. So, we had it planned out roughly that we were definitely going to do it. And then we went through, the due diligence process, which for the sale of Studio Press. And I think that was a good 5 months. Then it closed in June of 2018. Spent the summer at home getting ready, and then left at the end of August.
Wow.
So I just basically had more free time, and that turned out to be a blessing, because I don't think it would have been the same trip if I were full-time CEO at that point. Instead, I got to really just take a breath, because I realized that basically since 1998, except for that 3 months in 2005 where I was recuperating from having my head cut open, I hadn't taken a significant amount of time off. And it was hard at first to not do anything, to just be a person in France. I mean, as stupid as that sounds. But then I settled into it, and then my brain was allowed to reflect over the years. And it was amazing, the epiphanies that I had. I mean, things I didn't even consciously realize that allowed me to actually have a deeper understanding of what I did as an entrepreneur, with content and blogging, email, all of this stuff. And then I just got all charged up to come and start over again.
Yeah, I was going to say, for someone like me and you who love work so much and our whole life can be consumed with it because it seems like fun to us.
Yeah.
And it's like hard to turn it off. I'll find myself at the computer at 11 o'clock at night being like, oh my God, I need to go to sleep. Where did the last 3 hours go? And so my question to you was, what were some of the insights and epiphanies that you had when you finally turned that laptop off and started learning how to be a person again?
Yeah, I've told the story a couple times. Literally sitting at a cafe outside in France, drinking a glass of red wine, and just kind of reflecting and just realizing there were certain patterns and commonalities other than content or, digital marketing that ran through every business that I started, and you just start going, how did I not really see this in the moment? Because, and another aspect of it is, we were in the software and hosting business using educational marketing essentially. So I got to be a teacher in the way we marketed, which I love. But honestly, it's a lot easier to sell things like software and other products. But then when I came back, it was all about, okay, now you have to, if you're going to focus on training, then you have to deconstruct what you do. And I've talked to a lot of people. Seth Godin told me this, Brian Eisenberg. They're like, what we do is crazy. If you explained what you do, you'd look like a crazy person, right? So you have to find ways to quantify and systematize your own thought process. And that's challenging. It's also, a great exercise in creativity and while being authentic about it. Obviously, you can't just make stuff up. But I don't know, when you're in your office alone working and you're just kind of pacing around and throwing stuff against the wall, maybe that's just me. You certainly don't want to teach people that. So that was a challenge where I was like, you have to really understand what you've been doing over the years. I had to, are you familiar with the curse of knowledge, where you assume people know what you know, so you don't explain it? And they're like,
Yeah.
I don't get it. Right. Okay. My psychology background as an undergrad, my law training and practice of law, especially, perfectly primed me for copywriting and content marketing. And yet I don't explain those parts to people. I'm just like, well, you just do this. And they're like, what? Right. So this is the kind of stuff that you have to have serious reflection on and go, okay, how do you teach it all? How do you teach everything that's relevant that you know to the subject? And it's been challenging, but also so much fun, you know. Again, like you said, some people just like to do stuff like this. To me, building businesses is like some people play video games, which is why I don't play video games, because I would never do anything else probably. You know, if I got hooked on it, like when I was a kid, I love video games, but now I'm like, no, this is my video game.
I like to say sometimes that real life is a video game, and that's how I feel sometimes, like
Sure.
unlocking a new level, unlocking a new whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I mean, if you can, some people get offended when you say it's a game. But in reality, everything truly is gamified, even if the stakes are high, because that's what strategy is. It's this plan that you use to meet an objective, just like you would in a video game, right? My son's probably upstairs playing Destiny 2 right now instead of doing school. But, and I try to explain things to him in those terms so he'll get it, right? But yeah, it is. And especially when it comes to work, can you enjoy the game if that metaphor for what you do works for you?
Hmm. On the topic of games and where the world is going to go, you said one time that soon AI will write the code, but it's going to rely on creative humans who have an empathetic connection to other humans to make their lives better and solve a problem. What do you do to build that empathy?
Oh yeah, it's interesting, and that's a great question, because I'm working on the next version of a course that we do over at Unemployable, which is my other newer company. And empathy is at the heart of everything. And it's literally being able to see the world as your ideal prospect is, not just anyone, because that's a mistake, to think you're going to create anything that everyone is going to respond to. I'm a big proponent of, you have to choose the type of people you want to do business with, because if you want to talk about conversion optimization or persuasion, it's really not about changing minds. It's about leading someone with a similar mindset in the direction they want to go, which also meet your own objectives as well. So empathy is, seeing the world as they see it, and then walking the path in their shoes, and then go, okay, what do they need? What do they need at this point? What do they need at this point to keep going, right? And too many people start off with tactics like, I just need a sales funnel. Well, what do you think that funnel is supposed to accomplish? You're taking someone on a journey where you want them to buy something, but if you don't understand what they need to keep going or to meet that objective, you're not doing marketing. You're just throwing something out there. So empathy is the root of strategy, and strategy is how you choose which tactics will actually work. And yet it is frustrating. I used to get so wound up about people who would not listen and just try to go out there and do the tactic du jour or copy other people. I love that. Their audience isn't the same as your audience. How do you know that's going to work? It's not going to work. And so often especially when content marketing was new, the people are like, this doesn't work. Like, well, not the way you're doing it. I mean, because it's just like anything else. You can't just throw some content out there. You have to put the right stuff out there for the right people. Mm-hmm. And it is simple, but it's not easy. It takes work, but it gets easier over time. I can tell you that much.
Was there a moment when you knew or realized, wow, like Copyblogger and this strategy that I'm building, and was it even a strategy, or was it when you started Copyblogger, was it more of just like, let me try things out? Did you expect it? You didn't expect it to have the massive success that it had, but what was the moment when you realized like, oh, wow, I'm onto something here. I'm doing the right thing.
It's interesting because reflecting back on the very beginning 15 years ago, the first 3 months, man, they were crickets. I didn't get traction. It's interesting because I knew what I was talking about because I'd been doing it for 7 years, but no one else knew that I knew what I was talking about. And I had to, have that moment where I break through. And eventually that happened. And it was kind of interesting because some of the stuff I said, you got to remember, this is a totally different time, went against what bloggers believed. It was very idealistic at that time. It wasn't about selling was a dirty word. And then here I come and say, you shouldn't be trying to sell advertising for your blog. You should sell, products and services. And half the bloggers said, oh, that's interesting. The other half said I was the devil, but they linked to me. And their audience goes, I like what this guy is saying. And that's what happened. It took off like a rocket, right? So on one hand, I didn't expect the degree, but I understood that people would be interested in what I had to say if I could get in front of them. And then that was kind of the catalyst. Half of it was positive and half of it was negative, but it all worked. But coming into starting Copyblogger, no lie, I said, I'm just going to build an audience and I'm going to figure out what they want to buy. And that's the other big part of my philosophy, which is the audience will reveal, not tell you exactly, but they'll reveal what they want to buy. And, I took all of 2006 and half of 2007 to figure that out. But then when we did launch our first product, it was 0 to 6 figures in a week and 7 figures in a year. And I was like, okay, this is how it's supposed to go. But did I expect that level of success? No. But then in 2008, another launch, another company, this one was bigger. Actually, we went from, initially we're doing about 10,000 a month, and we started selling $10,000 a day. And this was in the WordPress market. And then in 2009, we launched our first SaaS and it happened again. And I'm just like, okay, this is getting nuts. And this is the point where, when we were talking earlier about checking my ego, I was feeling pretty good at that point. But I tried to stay grounded. Then, of course, we went on to start Copyblogger Media, and that's the one that hit 8 figures. So it's a wild ride. I'm writing, a book now for the first time, and I'm sitting there writing the chronology of what happened. And I just felt compelled to write. That doesn't sound very believable, does it? But it all happened. So I guess my own authenticity says, wow, that's kind of incredible in the truest sense. Not credible, but it did happen. And it's happened. The beautiful thing, I think, is so many other people have had similar stories and experiences. And a lot of those people were early Copyblogger readers, or they wrote for Copyblogger. So I think the thing I'm proudest of is not the money. It's all the people who make more money than I do, who got started. I love it. I really do. It's amazing. I remember before Atomic Habits came out, I read James Clear's site. A lot of people did, obviously. Loved it, just great stuff. And then somehow I ran across him on Twitter and he followed me. And I'm like, oh, wow, James Clear follows me. How cool. So I follow him back at that point. And he DMs me and he's like, hey, Brian, thanks, man. I got my start with Copyblogger. And I'm just like, are you kidding me right now? Like you can be a fan of someone who got started with you and you don't even realize it. And then you email me and you're like, hey, I got my start with Copyblogger when I was 13. I'm like, nah, this is good. That's the best podcast interview request I've had in a long time.
Well, I appreciate that. And the thing is, that's what's amazing about putting your work out on the internet. When people who you respect and admire also respect and admire your work, I don't think there's any better feeling. You know what I mean? Of just like mutual appreciation for each other. And it's no surprise. I had that same feeling when you followed me. I'm like, what is going on? Like, Brian Clark is following me. This doesn't make sense. This does not compute in my reality.
But the truth is, you know, you interviewed Tim, who's now my partner and copy blogger. He, you know, through a series of transactions. But you know, at first Tim was really kind of starstruck, like, and he was weird with me. And I was like, Tim, stop that. And then a few weeks later, he's like, you're just a regular guy. And I'm like, yeah, we all are, right? We're good at what we do, but don't worship other people. Learn from other people, right? Give them, you know, if someone gave you an idea and that helped you, let them know. But you don't hero worship. I don't think that's helpful. I really don't.
100%. I couldn't agree more. Everyone puts on their pants the same way in the morning, and understanding that helps you in every situation. So I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
So actually, one of my questions, and I'm so happy you covered it, was why haven't you written a book? Because when I was doing research for this conversation, I was like, this guy has been through a lot. I feel like a book could summarize it all really well. And so what is that book that you're writing, if you don't mind sharing?
Well, let me answer the first question before I get to that. Again, the way we were totally bootstrapped. I've never taken any investment money. I've started, I don't know, 8 or 10 successful businesses. And it was always by building an audience. And how did you build an audience? Well, you created content that was good enough to sell, and you gave it away for free. I mean, that's my definition of content marketing. So unless you're James Clear and you sell 1 million copies, or Ryan Holiday, right? Another guy who came up with Copy Blogger. There's not a lot of money in books. You know, I gave away content. I mean, I wrote a report in 2007 to launch our first product that made me millions of dollars. It was 20 pages long, right? Can you get away with that with most business books? No. So to me, except for, you know, we had our, you know, training programs in our communities where they were paid to join, it was always better to give away my best stuff and then sell software and hosting and conferences and WordPress plugins and all of that good stuff. And so now I've gotten to a point where those products are gone, and I'm in the business of trying to help people succeed at a deeper level than you do with perhaps, you know, the free articles and whatnot that we gave away at Copy Blogger. And it's been 22 years since I've started. It's been 15 years with Copy Blogger. You know, it's amazing a guy your age even knows who I am. And that's only because you were paying attention at 13. But, you know, you can't rest upon your laurels. So I look at the situation and the context now, and the type of businesses that I'm growing now. And I'm like, okay, it makes sense to write a book now, because even people who've been following for a while are like, man, it's been so long, I don't even remember the story. It's a pretty good story, you know? Like, you start off with a guy who is successful as an entrepreneur, but he's miserable because he doesn't understand how to manage. He's a great marketer, terrible manager, right? Has a snowboarding accident, almost dies, gives it all up, starts a blog, and that led to all this stuff. That's a good story. And I think that's another thing I got when I was on sabbatical. Take a step back and look at it objectively and go, it's a pretty good story. At some point, you should probably share this. So I would say the first book is generally, it's not, I am such a how-to guy despite myself. So many people, you know, Seth Godin is who I consider to be my mentor. And, you know, first through his books, and then we got to actually know each other. That was another thing. You know, I was always starstruck of Seth. And then I was like, he's just a nice guy from New York, you know, I mean, very smart guy. But anyway, he's like, I don't get how you do all this how-to stuff, man. You know, you got to motivate people. And I'm like, I'm not too much of a motivational guy. And now I'm more motivational than I ever was. And Seth is doing how-to courses. So everyone evolves. But yeah, I didn't want to write a book that's just anecdotes, right? Enough story and example. for people to understand that this is a real thing. I don't think, when I started Copy Blogger, the idea of online business was still a little sketchy. It was like, now you've got everything's digital. Amazon, Twitter, Facebook, these are all the richest people in the world. I mean, it's a different degree, but people understand now, oh yeah, you can make real money. But how do you actually go about that as a little guy, as opposed, not a VC funded thing? So that combined with the rise statistically of $1 million one-person businesses. These are businesses that have no employees, often no investors. It's just human creativity paired with technology and the internet. And I'm just fascinated by it. And we discovered that over doing the podcast on Unemployable. We introduced the concept of 7-figure small, and the audience just went, yes, tell me more. So that's now the name of the podcast, and it's the name of the first book, and it should be out this year.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to read that. And, it leads me to my next question, which is, what do you say to the people who believe it's too late? Because I know one of your beliefs is that we're just on the edge of what's to come in terms of greater innovation. So yeah, I would love to hear you expand on what you're telling people who are thinking, oh my God, I'm too late to this. Look, Brian Clark already did it.
Yeah. No, I know. And it's another thing that's frustrating, but you're like, just keep your eyes open. There's always another wave. So guess what my first business was, Danny, in 98? The only one that failed.
I actually came across this on my research, but I'm blanking on it right now.
Email newsletters.
That's right.
Now, what's real hot right now?
Email newsletters. That's right.
See? Okay. So one thing that's eternal is email. No matter what you wrap it up in, blogging, podcasting, YouTube, you've got to get people back to your own asset, and that's your email list. But then again, so when I became known, as opposed to the first 7 years, I did it through the context of blogging, but I broke every rule of blogging there was, right? Tried to make it more like a magazine, wrote longer content, made it educational, not personal. So there's always room to disrupt the status quo, to zig when other people are zagging, and go in a different direction, even within the context of what you think you're too late on. But of course, after, blogging, then content marketing, which is what we were doing, got a name. And then that was the thing. And then that gave way to podcasting, right? Then that was a big thing. And now people are like, is it too late to start a podcast? You just say, and now we're really back raging hard with email newsletters. So first of all, it's never too late for something good or great, I should say. The context has changed. I mean, blogging before 2010 and the early social media was a gold mine of viral distribution and traffic. It just doesn't exist anymore. Now you have to pay for that because, again, Facebook and what have you became mature juggernauts now as advertising platforms. But to something that you said earlier, I mean, think about, if you can, what year were you born?
1995.
Okay. So see, I was on the internet before you were born. That makes me feel good. But think about what the internet was like in the 90s. Pretty primitive. We had the .com thing where everyone was insane and threw a bunch of money at crazy business models. That exploded, imploded, whatever. But just think about that internet compared to where we are today. And then imagine that where we are today is more primitive than where we're going to be in 10 years. Doesn't seem possible, right?
Yeah.
But I suspect it is, because augmented and virtual reality, it's going to take a while to catch on. It's just like with AI. It was like everyone talked about AI for so long, and then all of a sudden GPT-3 was here, and it was like, oh my God, this thing can create content. Like, that didn't just happen out of nowhere. It was happening a long time, and then it breaks through. Now everyone's like, oh God, am I going to have a job? Is this computer going to do everything? Write the code, write the content? And the answer to that is no, but it's going to be a creative writer's best friend, that technology. Anyway, so the way the internet now runs is basically a page metaphor. And all the dumbest mistakes that have been made in the last 20, 25 years of the internet have been taking offline concepts and apply them to the internet, like the banner ad. Bad idea, but it was like a print magazine metaphor, and that's what people knew, and that's what they tried. So once you move beyond a page metaphor to a place metaphor, you're going to see the entire web transform. There's a standard that's been in play for a few years, more than a few years now, where once we have the hardware that allows for augmented and virtual reality, then web pages will then become places instead of pages. Now imagine you get in on that early. I know it's crazy, but the pandemic has been awful. But what it did do was speed up virtualization at a rapid pace. So now you're going to see more people on board with each incremental improvement or change that we go forward with. So the whole thing that's going to break the whole augmented and virtual reality thing will be, I think, Apple. They've had AR glasses in development for a couple of years now. We may see them this fall, and it's crazy because the iPhone changed the world, but we're going to look back at the phone and go, God, that was dumb. It was a dumb interface for information when you can instead have it right in front of your face. But I'm just telling people, okay, look, if anything, everyone who was holding out on digital in business got on board when bricks and mortars were basically shutting down. So now you've got everyone on board. Online business is something that is no longer scoffed at. Now everyone is like, how do I do this? Right. So that's a great thing for people who create software, who create courses, who have podcasts and blogs and whatnot that guide people along to help them, because how can it be too late when you have millions of people clamoring, going, I don't understand any of this? That's the way you need to look at it. We were all early adopters. And it seems like in my world, well, everyone understands content marketing. No, they don't, not in the real world. And I would suggest get out of your little bubble and go talk to real people that aren't like you, and you'll discover a world of opportunity right there. So even before we get to the freaky science fiction Ready Player One virtual reality scenario, it's coming. Don't scoff. Pay attention to tech trends, because technology converges right now at a point where it's not just AI advances. AI mixes with augmented reality and something crazy happens. Automation, we're going to have self-driving cars mainstream probably in 3-4 years. That's crazy. I can't wait, because think of how many people die because of stupid car accidents. But it's going to be an interesting decade. It's going to be a chaotic decade, not just politically, but because of the disruption that this technology and specifically automation is going to have. There's going to be a lot of people who need retraining. There are going to be a lot of people who need help with digital concepts that you may take for granted, but they don't. So again, curse of knowledge. Don't assume people know what you know, and you'll find an entire world of opportunity right in front of you.
Wow. Where do you go to find your latest news? Because it seems like you're on the cutting edge of a lot of this stuff. For someone like me, I'm thinking, I don't know about half the stuff that he's talking about with the glasses and all this, but where would you suggest someone go to learn more about stuff like this that are on the cutting edge?
That's interesting, because I always figure guys like you are all up on this stuff already. But it's really just what you pay attention to. And there's an entire internet out there. You got to pick your sources carefully, obviously, but But yeah, there's news on all these emerging tech trends, from 3D printing to biotech to AI to AR and VR every day. And I pay attention to it at a level that I'm like, I can't believe what's happening. And yet the mainstream attention span does not understand it at all. But then again, in 2005, I was paying attention insanely to blogging,
Yep.
which most people thought was just a bunch of nerds talking about what they ate for lunch. And that was true. So, which meant that it was ripe for, entry at that point.
Yep.
To come in. It was becoming commercial. I saw an opportunity. I had a skill set. I knew some stuff about copywriting specifically that helped. And that's how you find opportunity. So Amy Webb is a futurist, and she's a really smart person. But she calls it paying attention to the signals at the fringe. And if you can figure out which of those fringe signals are going to become mainstream or at least viable, then there you go. It's really an exercise in paying attention. But there's a lot of great books out there right now on, there's a book called The Future is Faster Than You Think. That's a little, what's his name? Peter Diamandis. He's way too tech optimistic, right? Like I've seen how badly social media gone wrong as an early, advocator for social media. And I'm like, oh, what have I done? This is a cesspool now. So I'm not a techno utopian by any stretch. But that's a good book if you want to just understand the major tech trends and the convergence of those tech trends and how they're going to radically change things. And when things change, it can be scary, but that's where the opportunity is. You don't need to disrupt. The world is going to be disrupted. What human needs come out of that disruption that you can serve, and you can build a business around that.
Yeah, how I look at it is almost you saw the wave coming that was blogging, and you rode it to a destination that was beneficial for you. You're identifying waves in the surface that nature is providing, and you just bring that and are trying to navigate that as best as possible. Does that sound right?
And that's how you get lucky. Did I know in 2006 that by 2008 it would be called content marketing, and by now it's a $50 billion industry? No, I didn't know that. I got lucky because I did the work based on an opportunity that I saw that was viable, and then it became huge, right? I think there's a bunch of that stuff right now. It's all about timing. Again, blogging started in 98 or 99, I think, is the history of it. And through the first 5 years of this century, it was non-commercial, kind of utopian, but it was a thing. People linked to each other and they debated each other. And then, I came along and said, if you create better content, you'll get more links. Google will rank you better. You'll build an audience, and you can figure out what they want and sell it to them. And that turned out to be a big deal.
Well, that certainly proved true to this day and continues to prove true. One thing that I want to take it back to is when you were just starting and figuring out people to partner with. This is something you said in Forbes. You said a lot of people approached you to partner because you had an audience, and you said no to 95% of everything. But then you said yes to things that were right for your audience and not just right for your wallet, but it turned out to be right for both. And so my question is, further breaking that down, how did you identify those people to partner with, or those companies?
That's interesting. Yeah. So again, after my epiphany in 2005, where I realized I was a terrible manager and a great marketer, I said, I'm never doing that again. I'm going to do what I'm good at. And that's how I started Copyblogger, and I built the audience. And then company after company after company, I partnered with people to do what I wasn't good at or couldn't do, like code, right? So my first partner was Tony Clark. He was a designer and a coder. We created an online course together. He built the site. This was before it was just off the shelf to build one of those things. And he became my COO as we grew into the larger company because he's Mr. Systems and Processes. And I was like, good, because I'm terrible at that. It's funny because of him, I have such a better appreciation of it. I can do a lot more by myself with my new companies than I would have done 15 years ago. And that's just the grace of learning from others, letting them do what they're good at, but watching, paying attention, appreciating what they do. And then, the next company, we created a WordPress product. I was like the use case as a non-technical content creator, but I didn't do the coding, obviously, because I can't do that. And then once we got into the SaaS level, obviously that was way beyond me. But I chose my partners based on two things. All of them came from the audience itself, right? They all reached out to me because they found that the principles that I talked about on Copyblogger resonated with them. And then they said, here's what we can do to create a product for those people. For example, the first SaaS was something called Scribe, which started out as like SEO copywriting SaaS, kind of evolved into a patented content marketing SaaS. It was fantastic. Sean Jackson came to me, met me at a conference and said, I built this software or designed this software based on your principles that you have stated on SEO copywriting on the blog. And I'm like, you got my attention. I mean, how much more perfect can you get, right? Software that incorporates your philosophy and tactics and everything into it. And that's exactly how that partnership, that's a good example. Sonia Simone became my chief content officer. She was one of the first people to buy the course we put out in 2007. She said, she was one of those people who's like, just take my money, right? She's sitting there refreshing the page, like, your best fan, but she's a brilliant writer. And really, she just needed a platform. I recognized how good she was. What she needed was just a little more confidence, and she got it by writing for the Copyblogger audience and helping grow to the next level from there. Already talked about Tony. Brian Gardner came in as the founder of Studio Press. An earlier partnership I had kind of fell apart because my partner was about your age and he made a ton of money and it kind of went to his head. I'll leave it at that. But Gardner came out with what I thought was a better product, more in line with what my philosophy. And he's a great guy. And I said, okay, Brian, if you join us, I will double Studio Press sales in a year. And we did it in 6 months, right? And then Studio Press went on to do, I don't know, 7 times that amount by the time we sold the WP Engine. So it's a combination of, is it the right product with the right philosophical and ethical framework behind it, if you will? I know that sounds kind of woo-woo, but it's important. And then it just comes down to, do I like this person? Can I work with this person? And, once we ended up with that partnership that got to 8 figures, I mean, we always seem to agree ultimately, unanimously on everything, no matter how much we fought and kicked and screamed, getting to that point. We're just like a family, and it worked. But just like families, you don't always agree. So you have to have someone you respect, right? If you don't have respect for someone, you can't have those disagreements and then end up at a point where you're on the same page. So partnering is, to me, it's been a key to the past success. And, with Tim and Jared today, the only project I don't have a partner on is Further. And that's probably going to stay that way just because that's my baby. Yeah. As you clued into it early in this conversation, that was your catalyst there for this phase of your life. So it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to keep this. And then Copyblogger and Unemployable, I've got partners in who help me do more than I could ever do by myself.
It sounds like that there's a term going on these days called a permissionless apprenticeship. And I think Jack Butcher is the one who created this term, or he passes it along a lot. And it's like, if you want to work with someone who you admire, just do the work and then show it to them and say, hey, this is what I did. Check this out. And it sounds like that happened a lot in your partnerships, and that's how people approached you with all these different opportunities was, look, I built this, or look, I'm a fan of your work already and I'm willing to do this. I bought your course, I did this, and I found value in it. And so that's incredible that that has been working since 2006 or 2007 and probably will forever.
Yeah, it's interesting because one way to attract partners is to have the audience. And that's obviously been a blessing for me. But all of those people didn't have audiences. They had talent and they had ideas, but more what you just pointed out, they had initiative. Like, you know, Sonia said she had to drink a glass of wine before she asked to guest post for Copy Blogger. And I'm like, of course you can, you know? And she's like, why did I stress about that? You know,
Yep.
Sean did all that work architecting that software. You know, no one told him it was going to work. I could have just blown him off, but he did it right. He did the software right, but he also had the approach that said, I built this because I think you're right about the way SEO works, you know, as Google continues to get more sophisticated. So yeah, I think you're right. There's two ways. There's always ways. It's just the person who does and doesn't second guess themselves. It can be difficult because I will roll things around in my head relentlessly before I'll commit to doing them. But once I commit, I just do it. I get frustrated with people who do that and then they second guess themselves once they've started. I'm like, you don't know. You don't know yet. Quit. Quit second guessing yourself and do it to a point where you can evaluate whether you're on the right path or you need to pivot or you need to give up. You know, there's no shame in quitting if you're on the wrong path. It's stupid to keep going if you're on the wrong path, but you have to go far enough to know that. You have to go far enough into the forest to know you're lost before you turn around.
And one thing that's really helped me from doing this, because I've been the type of person in the past who has been like you just described, but what has helped me is setting an internal goal of I'm going to put out 100 podcasts. And once you commit to that and let people know, then it's like, okay, I have to do it or else like I'm going to look stupid. So setting that internal goal and making it public has been a way to kind of counteract that in my own perspective.
Yeah, I like that. I don't think it's as smart to say, I'm going to follow this specific strategic plan without deviation for 100 episodes.
Yep.
During those 100 episodes, you have the opportunity to find exactly the answer.
Exactly.
So committing to the quantity is brilliant, but you know, you may change every 10 episodes based on what you're understanding slightly, not radically, or maybe there's a radical pivot at 48, you know, but you learned it by doing the work. And really, that's the only way you can do it. You have to put it out there in order to know if you're right or not, if you're connecting with people. And that's what's maddening about any, you know, whether it's content marketing or any form of content or information-based business, you just don't know. That's another reason why I never wrote a book before is because imagine you just lock yourself in a room for a year without any outside feedback into what you're saying or what you're doing. With, you know, writing incrementally and putting it out in public, I knew right away what was working and what wasn't. And that to me is indispensable.
You had that instant feedback loop when you were writing online, whereas you wouldn't get that necessarily when you're writing a book. So speaking of the book, what does your writing practice look like with the book? Is it like you sit down at the desk every day at a certain time, or is it more free flowing? What does your writing practice normally look like?
My writing practice now is editing because this is a different way of thinking about things, right? But I created a course that I sold to people and very hands-on training, got feedback, all of that. So conceptually, I put it out there already, not to the world, but to paying customers. Um, and now I just have to turn that into a book and edit but it's interesting. I say that because you would think, oh, well, you've already got it done. But once I processed what I've learned over the last year from that feedback, I've written 3 completely new chapters because I now have a better understanding, I think, of how to get these concepts across to people in a way that will stick with them and that they can actually do something with. So that's kind of an aside, but editing is more important than writing. I think the process of starting from scratch writing a book has always been just a little intimidating to me because I have such a reverence for books since as a kid. So to me, I'll create a course, put it out there and charge you $500, $1,000. But a book, that's $10. That's pretty serious. But every word has to be right in the book. But I've already got 2 more. Now that I've committed to writing books, the ideas, I've got a year after year kind of lineup of things I want to talk about. Of course, as we just talked about, it'll probably change. They'll adapt. But everything that I'm doing with the 2 businesses, other than Copyblogger, is kind of well spelled out in my head, at least in a broad sense, because I'm just at a stage of life where I don't have anything to prove and I love doing the work, and that's my criteria. So whoever wants to come along with me, I'll do my best.
Do you think that you have produced better work when you're just doing it because you love the work as opposed to doing it for money? What's your take on that?
Oh, I used to only do my best work under pressure, which is no way to live. I'm very good under pressure, and I put myself in positions with my back against the wall to get it done. That is a horrible productivity strategy, but if it gets it done, but again, that was back in the day where if I didn't have my writing done and it was 9 p.m, then, I'm just firing up the red wine and going to town. I don't do that anymore. That's just not the way to do it. So the other end of that spectrum to me is I'm not driven, I could take many years and do nothing, but that would be no fun. So now every time I sit down to write, it's because I have something to say that I want to put out there. And that's the motivation. Now, I still don't mind making money. Money's great. But it feels good, and if I don't feel like writing at that moment, I'll often do some other kind of work that I've been putting off. You know how like you'll go clean your room or something when when you don't want to study for the term paper. But that's when I'll do other business stuff that is like busy work that I don't like doing normally. I'm just well adjusted. I'm listening to myself going, God, you sound healthy. That's weird. Anyway, it took me longer than most, like I'm double your age, Danny. I think you're ahead of me already.
It's not a race. We're all just getting to the same place anyway. But Brian, this has been so much fun. Is there anything you want to mention before we wrap this up? Anything that is still on your mind that you think we can talk about?
Well, I'm going to assume that a lot of your audience is more your age than mine. And I would say, number one, take the opportunity you have to have, all the information and the resources to learn how to create the kind of business that you want to, that didn't exist back in 98. There's no, I can say we had to all make it up as we went along, but that's not great. If I would have had, all the stuff we have now, that would have been awesome. So take advantage of that, but don't put any pressure on yourself necessarily to create the perfect thing right out of the gate. Almost everyone has to learn just to economically survive without a job first. That's skill number one. It almost doesn't matter what you do, freelance, consulting, a bad product, so you can make a better product later. It's a long journey. It's a long road. Don't burn yourself out thinking you're in a race, right? Danny just told you it's not a race.
Awesome. Perfectly said, Brian. This has been tremendous fun. Where can people find more of you? If I'm sure they do, they want more of you after this conversation.
Well, if you are the entrepreneurial type or even the freelance type, Unemployable is a site where we try to help people out with that. We've got a community and some courses and stuff, but also we're about to fire up the podcast again and start cranking out the newsletter and sharing a bunch of free stuff, of course. So that's unemployable.com. And if you're above the age of 40, you may want to check out Further, which is at further.net. And that's where I share a lot of the personal growth stuff, but also the economic stuff. You can't become your best self if you hate your job or you have no money. So,
Mom, dad, grandma, you got that? You got them to sign up for that. Awesome. Thank you, Brian, so much. This has been a dream come true, a 13-year-old dream come true. And now I can't believe that it actually happened. So thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
The pleasure and the honor are all mine. Thank you, Danny.